Greetings, I'm Cam Miller, and this is Team 99. I look back at the 1999 Cincinnati Reds on the 25th anniversary of their improbable season. I've had such a great response. Thank you all for your comments and for emailing me. Remember, if you have a memory or story you'd like to share of the 99 Club, please email me at riverfrontcam@gmail.com. That's riverfrontcam@gmail.com, and I'll be reading them throughout the season. And I've got a couple lined up in store for you at the end of this episode. And what is this episode called? Episode 2, Shoot for the Moon. So spring training ends, and as the Reds are about to head north, a reporter asks manager Jack McKeon what he thinks his chances are this year. And Jack responds, quote, "We're going out there to shoot for the top. If you don't shoot for the moon, you'll never reach it," end quote. So the Reds were ahead of schedule. Now, what do I mean by ahead of schedule? Well, what was supposed to be a 3 to 4 year plan to be competitive by the time the ballpark opened up in 2003 turned into we're in it to win it, seemingly overnight. I mean, after all, there was one thing that this club had going into the season, and it was hope. The reigning Central Division champion Houston Astros had lost Randy Johnson to free agency and Moises Alou to injury. The Cubs lost Kerry Wood to injury, and the Cardinals lost Matt Morris and Alan Bennis to injury. So what did the Reds do? They acquired Greg Vaughn for some thunder, Mike Cameron for some defense. They beefed up the rotation with Denny Neagle and Steve Avery, and they added vets Hal Morris, Mark Lewis, Michael Tucker, and Mark Sweeney for the bench. And General Manager Jim Bowden only had to give up one crucial piece that was a part of their long-term plans in Brett Boone. The vibe during spring training was different in 99. Players were showing up early for extra work. Dimitri Young worked extremely hard with Coach Dave Collins to become a better outfielder. And Pokey Reese, who had been penciled in as the new second baseman after Boone's departure, was handling the transition pretty smoothly. Denny Neagle would have to start the year on the injured list with back issues, as would Pete Harnisch. But the rotation seemed, on paper at least, to be competitive. I mean, you had Brett Tomko, who was named the opening day starter. You had Jason Beret and Steve Avery holding down the fort until the horses were well. It seemed like the Reds were in a good spot. So Monday, April the 5th, 1999, opening day. And I'm sure most of you know this, but opening day is some kind of special in Cincinnati. It's unique, it's different, it's where baseball started, where the opening day tradition started, as a matter of fact. Now, a lot of managers and players don't like opening day as much as we do, the fans, because there's a lot of nerves, there's a lot of pomp and circumstance, and there's all of the meet and greets and organizations that want to kind of get to know you. So it's a different beast in Cincinnati. The Philly Market Parade has Joe Nuxhall as the Grand Marshal in 1999, and Kenny Rogers sings his new baseball theme song, The Greatest. And Loretta Lynn sings the national anthem as 55,112 fans pack into Synergy Field to watch the Reds take on Dusty Baker and the San Francisco Giants. Things got off to a rocky start for Tomko and the Reds. The second batter of the game, Bill Mueller of the San Francisco Giants, gets hit by a pitch, and he had to exit the game. So he was pinch run for by Charlie Hayes. Now, we'll get to Charlie Hayes soon. But Tomko then walks Bonds, Jeff Kent doubles, JT Snow singles, and before the fans could wolf down their first Big Red Smoky and ice-cold beer, it was 3-0. But the Reds came back with 2 in the second when Mike Cameron, remember, acquired for his defense, rocketed a 2-run home run to left field. In the fourth, Tomko was in trouble again. 2 doubles, 3 singles, and 2 walks later, and it was 6-2 Giants. But the rallying Reds got the offense going in the 6th, scoring 6 runs with the help of a Mark Sweeney pinch hit home run and a Sean Casey dinger. Just like that, it was 8-6 good guys. But enter the 7th, and enter John Hudak, and exit the ball hit by Ellis Burks for a 2-run home run, tie game. And in the 8th, the aforementioned Charlie Hayes, remember him? We talked about the pinch run in the first inning. Well, he crushes a 3-run home run off Gabe White. It's 11-8 Giants, and that would be the final score. So the pitching was absolutely off on opening day, but that's not unusual. You're trying to figure out where people fit and what roles in the bullpen. Obviously, Brett Tomko had a touch of the nerves being an opening day starter, but the offense, they came to life. They came to play, and there were some pleasant surprises. But the biggest surprise was probably Dimitri Young. His hard work on defense in spring training paid off early. Young threw out 2 runners from right field, bringing the crowd to their feet. Here's Dimitri.
You know what? That made my day. Great throw, got him out. And the crowd was wild, so I couldn't help but to throw those hands up. And they just got even louder. So that there, awesome.
And here's Jack McKeon.
I've said, for the last 3 weeks, the biggest concern is to get the pitching. Our pitching staff has got to do the job. These guys will get the jitters out of the way and relax a little bit. Get the pitchers throw strikes. We'll be all right.
It was only one game, until it wasn't. The Giants took the first 3 games of the season from the Reds. A sweep. Said Greg Vaughn, quote, "We've got to keep pushing. We can't keep saying it will be all right. All of a sudden, you're saying it's going to be all right, and it's the All-Star game," end quote. So, the Reds pitching, they issued 23 walks in that 3-game set. Not good. But the offense was humming. They scored 17 runs. And it was their worst start to a season since 1995 when the team went 0-6, and, of course, that team went on to the postseason. There was definitely no panic from the club. The pitching was still in makeshift mode, and the players were confident they'd get it together as they took a day off before heading to St. Louis. So 0-3, not good, but I've got a hunch that our heroes are going to turn the page in episode 3. Let's get to some emails. So the first one here is from Ian Hennessy, and Ian writes, "Dear Cam, where should I start on that magical season? First, a little background. Not unique by any means, but to set the stage. I grew up in the late 80s and 90s in Western Hills. I played knothole ball from age 5 to 14. I think I must have attended almost all of the kid glove games at Riverfront with my Delhi teams. My dad grew up in Covedale and eventually played for Western Hills High School, where Pete went, as he often reminded me, and in the early 70s against Dave Parker. Dad would tell me stories of Reds teams in the 60s and 70s and 80s. When I was 8, we stayed up and watched the 1990 World Series together. Later in elementary school and junior high, I would try to be the first to grab the sports page every afternoon. We got the Cincinnati Post, to look at where the Reds were in the standings. Even my church youth group included the legendary Warren Brown and Marcia Brown, who shared their own Red stories over the years. Now, sidebar, I'm friends with Warren and Marcia. They're absolutely legends, no question about it. So, Ian, you're spot on with that take. There was, of course, something of a gap in the Reds' competitiveness from 1996 to 1998, which coincided with all of the coming of age that comes along with 8th grade through the first part of high school. In the spring of 1999, I was a junior at St. X. The Bengals were bad. The Reds didn't look much better. Yet there was optimism in the air. The general optimism of the tail end of the 90s, sure, but also for Cincinnati. We knew a new stadium was on the way. The Reds finished 98 under 500, but not dismally. There was still a chance. By the spring and summer of 1999, my friends and I had pretty much maxed out on entertainment, such as it was, on the west side. We didn't have much money, and the east side seemed so far away. One thing we could always seem to agree on was a Reds game. Parking in a gravel lot, buying top 6 tickets and upgrading, and maybe grabbing a snack. That season was my first season as a grown-up Reds fan, at least in my own mind. I went to games with my friends, not just my family. There were low expectations for the Reds coming in, and early on those expectations felt justified. Then all of a sudden, the Reds started surging. By midsummer, it felt like they could win any game against any opponent, except maybe the hated Astros. So as much as my friends and I would goof off around the games, we were sucked into the drama, and the team's momentum continued to build. While I remember moments, key hits and outs, like Sean Casey's walk-up music and chanting Barry, cheering for the meat hook, the bread, the cheese, and Dimitri Young we'd sing, on and on. I don't have specific memories of any one game outside maybe of that slow-moving gut punch of Game 163, just the overall magic of that summer. What I remember most about the season was just the feeling of hope and optimism around it. It felt special at the time, and perhaps the beginning of something. We were on the cusp of the year 2000. The late 90s holiday from history was still in full swing. If the apocalypse didn't arrive on 12/31, maybe this was the beginning of a new Reds dynasty. Of course, we now know that even with Junior and Bichette, those dreams would be dashed. But for that one last summer of the 90s, the Reds, my Reds, were everything. Thank you, Ian. That is really cool. Thank you for sharing that. Now here's another one, and this one has special meaning to me because it's from my little brother, Chet Miller. He went on to play some college ball, and became a coach, and he's a good dude, and I'm not just saying that because he's my brother. Chet Miller says, just listen to episode 1. Great job. It's crazy to listen to old interviews and sound bites and realize it's been 25 years. I remember playing for Charleston and following the Reds like it was yesterday. Can't wait for the next one. Well, Chet, thank you very much for that email, and I hope that you enjoyed episode 2. Now, coming up in episode 3, we're going to talk about that first road trip that the Reds took as they began in St. Louis and some of the momentum they started to gain. And we're starting to figure out what the pitching is going to be. We start to get some key figures back, and slowly but surely you start to feel a new machine building, chugging along as 1999 rolled on. Now remember, you can follow these podcasts on Apple and Spotify, but also on my Queen City Historical Review page. I'm Cam Miller. Thanks for listening.